Alright, welcome to Nosy Joe's Motovlog. We're looking at round 4, Crossroads cross-country racing at Bar P Ranch. This is kind of in the Bloomington, Indiana area. I'm on my 2003 Suzuki DRZ 400E. This is my second race on the bike. If you guys want to see my first race, just watch my video that I last posted about, well, a DRZ 400 hair scramble. This was a pretty nice day, mid-70s. There'd been a few sprinkles in the last 24 hours, but nothing too crazy. You can see the dust on the track here. A lot less mud than at round 3. I'm going to be showing you my second lap here. Some of those scenes that you saw before the video, or before the race footage started, was from lap 1, which was my worst lap. I spent 36 minutes on that. Part of that was me screwing up. Part of that was me getting in that pile up that you saw there, taking a while to get up that little hill. My second lap here's a little more smooth sailing, since I know the course, so I thought I'd show that for you guys wanting to see what the course was like for a future reference. There's a lot of kind of open field and trails in this, kind of like we see here, and then you dive into some woodsy areas, drop it into creeks like you see here. Up here on the left is a place that I thought you had to go up into, but you don't. That kind of messed me up in the first lap, which caused me to crash right here. But on the second lap, I did a lot better job there. Not as many bikes, you have more options on where you can be on the course. Pull off to the side here, let some faster guys go by, and I put my goggles back on. I'd taken them off so they didn't get steamed up. I was just recovering from that pile up earlier, but always want to wear your goggles. You never know when you might get a rock or a tree branch under your helmet. So yeah, overall I really liked this course. I thought it was well laid out. Of course, you can always complain about the bottlenecks, but honestly, there was lots of guys helping us through those, and really after the first lap wasn't a factor. The course held up pretty well for the race. There was a couple places as you come up out of creek crossings and stuff that got some ruts, but overall better conditions than the Tunnel Valley. I'm usually not a big fan of the big open areas, but I kind of welcome them during this race. I don't know, maybe I'm just getting a little bit faster through those sections, but the DRZ does kind of like to be opened up a little bit. Seeing some fourth gear every once in a while. But then there was enough technical to balance it out too. During my first race, I did a lot of compare and contrast to the XR600, which is what I raced this winter. I'm not going to talk about that so much. I will talk a little bit about some of the tuning changes I made to the bike since last race. I did have a few problems last race that you just really don't know about until you do a couple hours on it in a race environment. One, I talked about the front end washing out a little bit, and with the conditions of the first race, I didn't want to make too big of a change because it just was kind of slick. So I didn't want to do anything wild. Here's a little tricky spot. This guy lost it here, and I had to go up around 10. But anyway, to address that, all I did was I just took the forks up in the triples about 1 millimeter, which isn't much, but that's the whole point. I didn't want to make a drastic change for something that was maybe more. This is another tricky area here. I had trouble with hitting that root and then making that turn on the off camber, so I take the time to just kind of straighten it out and get going again. But yeah, just moving them up 1 millimeter, just put a little more. What that does is I guess it shortens your wheelbase slightly, but my point of it is it just moves the center of gravity a little forward on the bike when the front end sits lower. It just puts a little more weight on the front. Now I could accomplish the same thing by just sitting a little further forward on the bike, which I probably need to do anyway. But anyway, the whole point of it's to be predictable handling, and it was, and it was still a little light in the front, but I never lost it, never dropped the bike for that reason. I didn't really drop the bike that much. What you saw in the kind of the preview section was the extent of it, and I think I kind of make a mistake somewhere on this lap, just real quick, where I drop it, but it wasn't related to the front end. I just wasn't weighting the bike right. There was a lot of, you want to call them G-outs or dips in this course, and some of them were kind of gnarly, and I need to learn how to articulate those better, whether I need to kind of wheelie into them or carry the front over them, or just do a better job of popping up out of them. I'm not sure what the best approach is yet, but I think I've figured it out, because there's about 6 of them per lap here on this race. So yeah, that was the front end changes I made. I also talked about, and you couldn't really see it so much in that first lap in the last video, but the bike wanting to basically kind of stumble off bottom. I wasn't sure, what was going on there. I talked about the accelerator pump maybe, and just jetting in general, but here's what I ended up doing. I just got the bike home, took the seat and the tank off, and pulled the plug, and it was pretty much fouled. And so I think what I was experiencing is when I'd be in a section of the course that I kind of got to clean it out a bit. It ran all right, but then once I got back to kind of low RPM lugging, it was just way too rich. So I did a little bit of studying, consulted Thumper Talk and different forums on the internet, and I really didn't know what needle I had, other than my experience with this FCR39 car didn't really seem like it ever been apart or had much done to it when I did the jetting for it. And so I kind of started looking into needle settings. There was a lot of discussion on that, and pretty much the agreed upon best needle for people who are around sea level, which Kentucky, Indiana is going to be less than 800 foot elevation, good hill climb here, was this EMN needle on the third position groove on the clip. So I ordered one of those from Jets R Us, which the shipping I think was as much as the needle was, but Anyway, I've had decent experience with them, and I just simply put that in and set it on the third clip needle position, which compared to the original, or what was in there, and that needle was unmarked, so that was kind of, don't really know what I had other than it was probably just the stock needle. It was in the fourth clip position, which is raising the needle, so just nothing else. It was at a richer position originally, and in that needle shape, it's hard to really eyeball that up and tell, but all I can tell you is I used less fuel, and the spark plug never acted like it was fouling or having any trouble off bottom during this whole race, so it ran super clean. And I'd actually ran it for a couple hours at Eagle Creek Hare Scramble Park last Sunday, so I'm probably at 5 hours on it now, and it's just still complete running clean, no problem. So anybody out there with the DRZ 400 and you've done maybe the FCR conversion, because only these old e-bikes had the FCR 39, and I'm not talking about the MX carb, by the way, I'm talking about the original slant. So here's that area from the first part of my video where everybody was hung up. So all I know is going right's supposed to be the easy area, but I didn't realize I could have actually missed this whole thing and gone far right. So I went ahead and gone up the hill here, and then I kill it. It gets kind of rocky up here. But yeah, there's a far right bypass to all this stuff, which I didn't understand. Cash talked about it in the Facebook video, kind of warning us about that section. But through the trail markings and whatever, I just didn't realize there was actually a full bypass to all this. So the third and fourth laps, the helpers there were a little more adamant to take that far right and bypass all this stuff. So I did. This is where it joins back up, right up here on the right. So anyway, I did that on laps 3 and 4, but was still kind of making it hard on myself here on lap 2. Anyway, FCR 39, this is the slant version of the carb that came on the early 2000s DRZ 400Es. The EMN needle, third clip position, is where you want to be, and just forget about it. Guys who mod the DRZs often talk about the 3x3 mod. This bike doesn't have that, but it doesn't need it because it already had a hole from the factory there, square hole from the factory. That's what the whole 3x3 mod's based on. It's just how these e-bikes already were. And then this has the full FMF exhaust, so that all worked out really well. I don't think I'll be playing with carb tuning at all. It just ran good. When I did the jets, I'm going to have trouble recalling the numbers, but I think on the pilot jet everybody just runs a 45 on these things. And I think my main jet's like a 160-ish, maybe 162, something like that. It was actually smaller than what the guy had in there originally. Well, I wouldn't say originally, but previous owner had something like a 170 or 165 in there, and actually backed that off a little bit. I don't know if that was right or wrong. I don't spend that much time with wide open throttle. But the other thing I did, which I wondered if wasn't contributing to the fouling of the plug, was I played with the accelerator pump timing. And you can watch, there's lots of good videos on this on YouTube. Here's one of those dips. I'll count them off, but there's dip 1, here's dip 2. Lots of videos on how to do this. Now, most of the videos are about a little bit more modern version of the FCR 39, where there's like a Phillips screw with a spring. Here's dip 3. just don't know how to do those fast. But my carb's actually an older one than what you see on YouTube a lot, where you just kind of have this somewhat external push rod. I know people play with the length of it, but you kind of have these two tabs that you can kind of spread apart or squeeze together on the linkage that runs that rod up and down. And what I had to do was kind of make the rod delayed a little bit so it didn't come in so early. And you can, when you have the carb off the bike, again, watch these videos. They show some really good slow motion videos, and the whole point of it, of the timing of that, is not to be squirting the accelerator pump dip forward when before the slide's out of the way. So you crank the throttle open, your slide raises, and in the case of my accelerator pump was actually starting to spray down the slide before it got up out of the way. So I just delayed it so that the slide was out of the way, and then the stream coming from the accelerator pump hit then. So it might have even have been a little bit too much delayed. I played it safe, but I didn't want all that kind of, what you end up with just is this kind of real wet condition inside the carb where that fuel isn't really atomized right, because the slide's just kind of soaked down with this dripping fuel. So I figured that had a lot to do with fouling plugs, and it made the bike just a little smoother off idle. It still technically has a bog if you just sit there and kind of crack it open when you're not riding it. But when you're riding it, I don't know, I guess it never revs that quickly, so it's not really a problem. So that's a problem I'm not going to worry about trying to solve. I got some comments on my previous video about using like a Boyson accelerator pump cover, which I've seen those things, and I'm not sure exactly what they're doing, but it's supposed to help with that bog. I think I'm alright. I like the way it's acting right now, where it's a little bit lighter, softer hit just off the bottom. Just makes it a little bit more controllable, especially in these slick conditions. You're keeping your traction up. A creek crossing. That guy I passed right there on the right was in my class on the Kawasaki. I think I was in 8th place at the end of the first lap, and so passing him puts me in 7th, and then that's where I pretty much hold for the rest of the race. Another creek crossing. It's got a little slick. I just tried to take it to the high side. So anyway, I did a new needle. I played with the accelerator pump timing, delayed it. I dropped the forks down a little bit, or moved them up, I should say. Dropped the front end down. I'm trying to think. I really think that's it. I noticed this bike, for whatever reason, likes to loosen up bolts more than my XR did. So I lost a seat bolt the first race. I lost a side cover bolt at Eagle Creek, so I just went through the bike right before the race and tightened up all the 8 and 10 millimeter bolts, made sure everything was good and everything stayed together. That's kind of weird. I mean, I don't think the bike is being high vibration, but it does like to loosen up bolts, and the proper thing to do is just put blue Loctite on it, but I kind of got lazy about that on the XR, so maybe I just need to go back and treat this bike more like a 2-stroke and blue Loctite everything, not have those problems. But yeah, pretty much all the changes were in the right direction. So last race I got 3rd place. This race I got 7th. Why was that? Because honestly, I rode better and the bike did better. I'm not sure. I think there was just tougher competition this race. Of course, the conditions were better. So if you're a fast rider, it was to your advantage. Where I am, I don't think I'm a super technical rider. It's just that my experience is when the conditions are bad, and when it gets more technical, I just tend to place better. Like my normal slow style just kind of is not as interrupted by poor conditions. But this was also a regional qualifier, I guess for some type of state championship race or something like that. I'm not sure. So a lot of people came, paid an extra $20, and were trying to qualify for this championship round. So maybe that brought out some good riders. I kind of looked. There were definitely a few names that were different from first race, and we had more riders. I think we maybe only had 7 or 8 last round versus 10 in my class. So more and better riders, I guess, and that's fine. I mostly would just like to finish races without getting hurt, so I have the opportunity to do it again. And I like the challenge of just doing a 2-hour race. And the reason why I have these old bikes is I kind of like tinkering on them and trying to get them to perform better and better, which is fun for me. So that's what I did. So I was pretty happy with how this race turned out, even though my placing wasn't that good. Mike McDonald, if you look at the race results, he got 4th, which is 3 places better than me, and he had gotten 1st at Tunnel Valley, and he's a real fast rider. He has a 2019 KTM 300XC, and he dropped down 3 spots from round 3 as well. So, and he didn't have any particular trouble that he mentioned. He just said I think he had another dip. This is the one where I lose it. Yep. I think this is kind of like a wreck I did in the first round, where it was like I wasn't quite centered on the bike with my weight, and then you put the forks in kind of a sideways jam going into that dip, and you just kind of want to go over the handlebars a little bit. I was going slow enough, I just kind of tipped over. But yeah, anyway, Mike getting 4th as opposed to winning, and me getting 7th instead of 3rd just probably speaks to the better competition this race, which is fine. I felt like I rode about as good as I could. I'd appreciate any comments on kind of pre-race nutrition, if you will. I didn't feel like I was starving after this race. I went right to the food truck and down 2 cheeseburgers and 2 Gatorades, because I think I was a little bit low on energy. Like, I wasn't tired, but I was just hungry. Usually I try to eat a little more. These 1 o'clock races kind of hit me at a weird time, and then today they were behind schedule a little bit. I think we didn't get off the starting line until about 20 after 1, so it's kind of hard for me to figure out like when I should eat in that situation. Obviously I've eaten breakfast, and I'd say a lot of these races and other series are around 12 or 12:30, and so it's like, okay, well, I'll have something at 10 o'clock. So that's kind of what I stopped at a gas station on the way and just tried to find a little something to eat, but some sugar in it, some caffeine, and then I do put something in my Camelback. do the hydropower. If you guys aren't familiar with that, you check them out. It's owned by a guy who used to race dirt bikes, so it's kind of like along the lines of Rhino Power or something like that, but definitely a smaller time dude. But I think the stuff works pretty well. Doesn't keep you from being hungry, but you definitely keep, as far as hydrated and arm pump and all that alertness, I think it's good. But yeah, I definitely should have eaten more, I think, before this race started, because I was starving at the end. I don't do like the heart rate monitors and all that like some of the guys do, but I know these guys that do that. You kind of put in your weight, all that, and it actually figures your calories. I mean, a lot of guys are burning 1,500, 1,800 calories during this race, which is nearly a day's worth of energy. So, mountain bikers think all we do is just sit on the bike and ride, but there's actually a lot to it. As anybody knows who's actually raced, it wears you out. So I'd say that's a third reason why I enjoy the races. It's just, I have to kind of stay in shape to do it, so watch my diet a little bit, but I try to work out between the races 3 times a week. And that part has to be good for you. I don't know that how I feel after the race is so good for me. I just felt like I got hit by a truck normally. It's rough, but I find it rewarding. It's weird, I guess. Here's a family along the side of the course. I saw a lot of that this race, where people would suddenly be in the trail. I wonder about that. It's dangerous, obviously, for them. And I mean, how would a rider feel if you hit some kid accidentally? So I think people need to be more careful there. But luckily, didn't hear of any issues. But I did see a couple, 3 times where people were just crossing the trail, or just obviously had been crossing the trail once I approached, or we're just kind of hanging out awfully close to it. But I suppose they're probably racing families and know the risks. So. I'm usually pretty laissez-faire. I just would hate to hurt anybody. Here's kind of a little off-camber section. It's a little tricky with the turn here. Coming back out to the field. Pretty sloppy right in that area. No big deal. There's a lot more field to any of these races than, this is super sloppy, than really anything we do in Kentucky or Tennessee. So at least this round 3 and 4 for me are strange in how much time we spend in these open areas. Like I said, I usually don't like it that much. But I don't know. It didn't bother me so much this race. A little tricky off camber here again. Nice little route to pop up out of. So maybe I'm adapting to the open. I feel like I don't know how to articulate the turns well when it's just flat. I need something to bank up against. Little hill climb. Let the fast guys go by. A little downhill here. I usually hate downhills, and I was never able to get it stopped to make that first right turn, so I always overshot it and dropped down in here, and you had to jump a little wall, get back on the trail. I did that every single lap. I don't know how guys were able to roll down that hill and make that turn. But yeah, I need to get better at just pulling a tight turn and then on a completely flat surface. I think that's my issue with racing out in the open like that. In the woods, you normally have a little bit of something to bank up against on your turns. There's some more people just in the trail. I think he was wanting me to go underneath the camera there. I didn't realize what he was doing, but I'm not sure what was going on there. There's another little downhill that you can kind of cut across or drop down. I took the slow, straight forward line, and then there's a guy up here I think that's going to cut through. I tried the cut across line in the last 2 laps. It was definitely more challenging. You had to hold that hill and not hit trees at the same time, so you couldn't drift off that line or you're going to be in trouble. Other people right next to the trail crossers. A couple little dips here, and then we head up to timing. So again, finished in 7th place. Hope you guys enjoy the video, and hope you see you next round. Later.